Welcome to the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. Today, we will be talking about how we can help babies grow and develop in the NICU through positive sensory experiences and a program that supports sensory development in the NICU. My name is Kate, and I have a background in occupational therapy. I'm excited you are here to listen today, and hope this presentation supports you in caring for preterm infants. Today's goals for the session are to identify at least 5 appropriate positive sensory experiences to deliver to a preterm infant to increase awareness of and support for neurosensory motor development of preterm infants by responding to a question during the presentation. Compare the 5 infant states of arousal to be better prepared for interacting with infants in different states by completing a fill-in-the-blank based on key factors within each state. Reflect on at least 2 benefits of delivering positive sensory exposure to preterm infants to increase understanding of this intervention by summarizing personal experiences with an infant. Our sensory systems help us to experience the world around us. We can touch things to make connections about temperature, texture, or pressure. We can see our environment to make connections and recognize items or people. We can hear sounds and note connections or any familiar noises. We can taste foods and learn if they are sour, bitter, sweet, or salty. We can smell and learn to recognize chemicals or other odors around us. In fact, babies can recognize their mother's smell immediately once they are born. We can learn how to stay balanced and feel movement. This is called the vestibular system. And we can learn how to recognize where our body is in space. This is called proprioception. Now that we have talked about our sensory systems, let's talk about how these systems develop. Babies grow and have different experiences in the womb versus in the NICU. For example, in the womb, they touch smooth, wet muscle walls and consistently have boundaries on all sides by mom's tummy. As babies get bigger, they have less space to move and begin to cuddle up into a flexed shape. They also feel movement when mom walks around during the day. Babies in the womb hear sounds that are muffled, as well as mom's heartbeat. There is also nothing to see in the womb, and babies are only exposed to darkness. The NICU, however, looks a little different. Babies receiving medical care often experience touch from caregivers that may be startling. They may hear loud noises and monitors in the NICU, or be exposed to bright lights. But there are many things we can do to help create an environment as similar to the womb as possible to support these babies in their development. One program, called the SENSE program, supports babies and families in the NICU by recommending certain types of positive sensory exposures that may help the baby's development. Listed on this slide are potential modes of sensory exposure that could be beneficial for infants and families. Parents often play an essential role in helping to deliver this sensory exposure to their child. For example, holding an infant skin to skin is one of their favorite activities. Infants also benefit from listening to language, which we can do by reading, singing, or talking to them. Infants can feel movements similar to when they felt mom move around in the womb, when we swaddle and rock them gently and slowly. When infants are held by their parents, they can feel comforted as they smell mom and dad's familiar scent. As infants come closer to full-term ages, we can introduce cycled lighting by turning low lights on during the day to help teach them about daytime and nighttime. It is important to note that infants can tolerate and enjoy more sensory exposures as they grow bigger. For example, a young premature infant may only tolerate a few minutes of whispering, whereas an infant closer to full term may tolerate being held, rocked, and talked to at certain points throughout the day. It is important to follow recommendations from the NICU team for what sensory exposure is appropriate for each baby. The SENSE program, as I mentioned, is another resource that provides recommendations of sensory exposures as infants grow up in the NICU, but we will get to more on that later. In this picture, you see a father holding his infant skin to skin. What sensory systems is this baby using or experiencing during this activity? Here are some of the systems that may have came to your mind. Sight, because the baby is looking up at dad. Smell, because baby is learning to recognize dad's scent. Touch, because baby can feel dad's temperature and comforting touch. Baby is also learning where his body is in space. He feels boundaries from dad's chest, as well as the blanket and dad's hand on his back, which helps him feel safe and secure, like the womb. This is proprioception. And last, baby can hear dad's heartbeat, breaths, and voice if he's talking. This slide outlines different states of being awake or asleep that infants might show. The first state is called active alert. This is when the infant reacts to stimuli, may or may not cry, and may need help from a caregiver to quiet him or herself. The second state is quiet alert. During this state, the infant is focused on something in his or her environment and shows some movements or stretching. Quiet alert is the best state for interacting with the baby. The third state is when the infant is drowsy. He or she may be fussy and his or her eyelids may flutter. The infant will either wake up or fall asleep depending on caregiving in this state. The fourth state is when the infant is sleeping, also called REM sleep. These infants will wake up to eat. The fifth state is NREM. This is a deep sleep, and it is nearly impossible to wake an infant from this state. Remember that preterm infants spend a lot of time sleeping, but this is when they are doing much of their growing. Many infants can be held while they sleep, which would provide them with positive touch during their nap. Positive sensory experiences can be given throughout the day in the NICU. When parents visit the NICU, it is a great opportunity for the baby to hear a familiar voice, smell a familiar person, or simply cuddle. Before, during, and after medical care are also great times to provide sensory exposure to help balance out potentially painful experiences with more positive sensory input. For example, talking to the baby during care, containing the baby using your hands to help them feel boundaries similar to the womb, or covering their eyes if bright lights are turned on, are great ways to protect the baby's development. If the baby is asleep, holding him or her in your arms or skin to skin may be appropriate. One study found that babies who were held skin to skin had longer periods of deep sleep than babies who were held in a caregiver's arms. When the baby is awake, more stimulating activities may be appropriate. As we learned earlier, the best time to provide sensory experiences is when the baby is in the quiet alert state. The baby may also show you some signs that he or she is ready to interact with you. These signs might include being awake and making eye contact, holding onto your finger, bringing his or her hands towards the mouth or face, having smooth movements or stretches, opening his or her eyes, and looking around the room. Now that we've talked about sensory systems, their development, and how to provide sensory experiences in the NICU, I'm going to explain how these sensory experiences help. One report found that positive, age-appropriate sensory experiences that are delivered early in an infant's life support brain development. Sensory experiences also improve neurodevelopment. Neurodevelopment is the growth of our nervous system. The nervous system carries information about our body and surrounding environment to our brain, and information from our brain to the rest of our body. Preterm infants who are held more often in the NICU have also shown better reflex development. Good reflex development means the baby's nervous system is growing the way it should. The image on the left side of this slide shows the development of the human brain. As you can see, there is a lot of growth happening to the brain. The sensory experiences the baby receives directly impact this growth and can lead to more positive outcomes as the baby has opportunities to learn and experience the surrounding world. You may be wondering how much is too much, too little, or just right in terms of sensory exposure. It is helpful for babies to receive sensory exposure, but we also must be cautious of not overwhelming the baby and allowing time for them to rest and sleep. Babies often show us signs when they are overwhelmed and ready to rest. These signs may include crying, extending their arms straight out, putting their hand out like a stop sign, increasing their heart rate or breathing rate, having a decrease in oxygen saturation, looking away, no longer responding to stimulation, yawning, hiccuping, or facial grimacing. The SENSE program, which I mentioned earlier, gives weekly recommendations for how much sensory exposures should be delivered to preterm infants based on their gestational age. This slide provides more insights into SENSE, which stands for Supporting and Enhancing NICU Sensory Experiences. SENSE consists of two components, parent education and positive sensory exposure. SENSE is evidence-based and has been trialed in multiple research studies. It has been found to improve infant neurobehavior and maternal confidence. SENSE is typically organized by a neonatal therapist, such as an occupational, physical, or speech therapist, or another NICU staff member. Parents are expected to be the primary caregivers in adhering to SENSE and following the recommended sensory exposures, since parents are the most important part of the baby's life. Details can be recorded in logbooks, as desired, to monitor the infant's response to the types of sensory exposures he or she receives each day. If you are interested in learning more or getting involved in your baby's sensory experiences, you can ask more about the SENSE program. You can access SENSE via a QR code, which is on the back of this paper. The sensory recommendations increase as the baby ages in the NICU. Thank you for listening today. I hope this video will help you as you care for a preterm infant in the NICU. Here are some great resources if you are interested in learning more about the information shared on these slides. If you have time, please take a few minutes to complete this brief questionnaire about this presentation. Thank you for your participation, and feel free to reach out to the NICU staff with additional comments or questions. You can use a smartphone to scan the QR code below, or copy the link on the slide to access the questionnaire. The link can also be accessed in the comment section of this video. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.